Good morning, everybody. It's your Self Shift crew back for another Saturday morning podcast. You've got Patrick, Doug, and Derek. And we've got a good subject for this morning. This is something I think, at least for me personally, has been a focus of improvement for many, many years. And that's basically letting go of attachment to outcome. And this ties into a lot of stuff that we discuss on the Self Shift podcast and that type of thing. And this ties, at least from my perspective, very closely into control issues and not focusing on what is in your control. Because as we know, and we discussed previously, control is an illusion. So when you're focusing on things that are outside of your control, you tend to get a little bit sideways. But with that being said, I'm gonna kick it over to Doug, because I know Doug has got a bit of a perspective on this. So Doug, tell us what your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I think this one is a bit of a more advanced topic in terms of mindfulness and other things like that. So I've been on my own mindfulness journey to kind of catch myself worrying about things and recognize and be an observer to my thoughts and things to try to correct some of my thoughts. And so this one, I think, is a newer concept that Patrick introduced me to, and so it's something I've been trying to focus on. I catch myself doing it all the time in terms of work outcomes or personal outcomes. You know, at work, a lot of times I'm worrying about my team not delivering on something or having to go disappoint my leader or a business partner. And the thing I've been able to do of late is recognize that it's about, are we doing everything we can be doing? It's recognizing sort of the steps we're going through, the journey we're on, and not being so worried about the final outcome. It's a difficult mindset shift, I think, because no one wants to fail, and so it's not focusing so much on whether or not you're succeeding or failing. It's focusing on are you learning along the journey? Are you doing everything you can? That's just some initial thoughts. I do think it's a more advanced kind of thing to wrap your head around.
Yeah,
So
totally agree. Derek, Derek, what's your
here.
initial thoughts on that?
I think attachment comes from insecurity, and insecurity comes from so many things that happen to us in life. What people say about us or call us, what experiences we go through, through life, whether that's mainly negative, and we start forming a belief system, and we have ideas and ideologies that influence that, and it's a deep insecurity that comes from many things, and I think that breeds a lot of fear and a lot of chaos in your life when you live from that space, and that creates attachment. So you want to attach to something because you in the moment feel like you can control it, and you feel like you can have that go your way in a sense, and it's something that's completely out of your control, really, in all reality. So it just comes from a deep insecurity, is what I would say sums it up.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and I think we're going to go pretty deep here. So let's double click on a couple of things, and I'll give you some of my personal perspective. A lot of it completely aligns with Derek, what you said, and also Doug, what you were saying as well. Is that from my perspective, and this haunted me for years, is that I worked under the belief that if I did X, then Y was certain to happen, right? That if I did X and I did X well and I excelled at it, Y was going to happen, even if it depended upon other people, right? So if I do this, my wife will surely do this. Or if I do this, my kids will surely do this. Or if I do this thing at work, kind of like what you were talking about, surely then the work folks will see this and act the way that that I'm proposing, or whatever the case may be. So I had that mentality for many years, and for me, it was really, I think, based upon the fact that I did not focus on what was in my control. Right, I was way outside of my circle, and until I got and fully understood, and like you said, Doug, this is something that it's an advanced topic when it comes to mindfulness and other types of things. Until I really understood that all I controlled was my character, my integrity, what I focus on, what I eat, my exercises, how I carry myself, the effort that I put into things. And above and beyond that, the outcome is beyond my control, right? It's beyond my control. So once I got into that mindset and understood that I can do everything that I can do as it relates to accepting what is and living according to my core values, and then the outcome is different than that. And for me, it also focuses on, it's really helped in a couple of ways. It's been extremely liberating, actually, in the sense that I no longer focus solely on the outcome, which I did for most of my adult life, or my children, as my life as a child as well, my entire life, I should say, and focus on process and systems and habits and behaviors, right? Things that I can control, which they certainly potentially influence the outcome. But if the outcome is dependent upon other folks, I can't control that. I can only focus on, certainly what is in my control. And going back to what has enabled this, mindfulness has been key. The ability to observe my thoughts and stay in the present moment and recognize that I can only impact the present moment, being thoughtful, observing my thoughts and that type of thing. Also, the gratitude practice, right? The fact that accepting what is, radically accepting who you are, what you've got, and being grateful for that has really helped me to understand that if the outcome doesn't go my way, that's okay, right? Only thing I could do is align with my core values and move forward. And again, I've mentioned it a couple of times, radical acceptance has been really key for me as well. You can't argue and negotiate with the past. It doesn't work. Trust me, I've tried. You've got to accept it. You got to accept your where you are. Doesn't mean you can't improve. And that's why we're here at Self Shift, is to move forward and hold each other accountable. But you got to accept what is. And again, aligning with your core values, aligning with your core values. And something that you mentioned, Derek, that I think is really key as well, is you mentioned insecurity. And I think about it as uncertainty, right?
Mhm.
So embracing uncertainty, which is difficult, very difficult for me, I suspect for a lot of folks, in the sense that you can't control, the control is an illusion. So once you embrace the fact that we live in an uncertain world, uncertain reality, that makes it so much easier. And the I think, at least from my perspective, going through that process, or the process that I just described from a personal perspective, has been so liberating, because we all, if you're attached to outcome, and when the outcome doesn't go your way, it is so demoralizing and debilitating, right? But when you accept that the outcome is beyond your control, you've done what you can do, you focused on it, then it makes things so much easier. So sorry for that long diatribe, but this has been a key step in my personal development. So
Yeah, I guess there's a couple points within that just to add to, but the whole idea of focusing on the present, like again, to your control. I spend a lot of time worrying about the future and things that could happen. And, whether it's a specific outcome or just generally, when you spend so much time focusing on how things might play out rather than being in the present and appreciating the journey you're on and appreciating what's occurring in the present, to your point about liberating, you can have a lot more contentment if you're focused on the present, focused on like what's going on now. One other quick thing I'll throw in is one of the things I do is, I don't know if catastrophizing is the right word, or, you think about that future thing and you think the outcome is going to be this horrible thing. And then at the end of the day, however it plays out, it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be, even if it goes a little wrong. And as time goes on, as you look back, it really wasn't a big deal. And again, another sort of attachment right there is my self-worth doesn't hinge on any one thing going right or wrong, right? Like again, it's
yeah,
me going through the present, enjoying the relationships and the things going on in the present versus focusing on like what could go wrong.
yeah. Let me put you on the spot, Doug, for a second there. Can you give a real life example of where the key things that you just mentioned have been instrumental for you, in which the light bulb went off and it has had a positive impact?
Yeah, I end up tying, we spend a lot of time at work, right? And I end up tying a lot of it to work. I'm a leader of a group at work and a team, so I spend a lot of time worrying about my team delivering, about me being able to help my team do it. So you know one specific example is a little bit hard to come up with. I could just tell you on a daily basis we have things we're trying to deliver, and we have customers that are business partners, and worrying about it. At the end of the day, it's never that we don't deliver at all. We always deliver some value, and people are getting value from what we deliver. It's just it's managing expectations and those kinds of things. But again, that is when I was talking about looking back at something, I thought, hey, I'm going to get fired when my team doesn't make this report available as expected. It was so much less than that in terms of, something was delivered, value was gained, and, I wasn't fired.
Got it. Derek, what are your thoughts?
When I signed divorce papers, in that moment, present moment, realizing I'm now free to create the life that I want. So for me, and I was so attached to, oh, you've been married, 20 years, and, you have kids, and, you built this life together. That's all past, right? When you're faced with, in the moment of divorce and signing papers, it's a defining moment of, am I going to stay attached to the past, or am I going to attach right now to this moment where I am signing divorce papers? I'm now free. I can now create the life that I want.
Very
It's so
powerful.
much more of an important example than my work thing. But yeah.
Derek had the perfect example there. Thanks for sharing that. That's very powerful. And having, been on that, witnessing you go through all of that stuff, Derek, I can vouch for the fact that was the liberating moment of your life. So,
Yes.
so I know it was tough, but you certainly came out on the other side. So, some examples from my perspective, and these are, a couple of things pop up. Like, and I'm going to go back, and I'm 56 years old, and I still remember giving presentations in college, right, where I would just go to town on PowerPoint and study and stay up all night and practicing, because I was convinced that if that presentation didn't go perfectly and I didn't get a perfect score, my life was probably over, right? Catastrophizing, as you said, Doug,
Yeah.
in the sense that, and I can remember and this is crazy, but I had a blemish on my face, I guess a pimple, when I had a big presentation coming up. And my fear was the outcome of that would be people staring at my face during a presentation, which is completely ludicrous, but so focused on the outcome as opposed to the learning process and what the real purpose of the presentation was. And another key thing, and I'll give you a couple, you guys have, Derek, you went from personal experience, Doug, from a professional experience, is that I've experienced both as well. And when I look back my growth and my self-development, things on both sides were significantly impacted by that. By, like, for example, thinking that, if I, had a great job and brought home the money and stuff like that, then by default, the outcomes, my wife and my children's behavior would be a certain way, right? It's completely idiotic in hindsight, but thinking that if I did certain things, then the outcomes was almost preordained. And that certain behaviors would happen, and also at work, like prepping for a project or building a project plan, getting an architecture together, which I was extremely proud of, and I was convinced that everybody would just stand up and give me a standing ovation for this for this Peter architecture that we had or whatever. And when that didn't happen, I would stew about it for days, like, surely this outcome should have been preordained because I did this, right? And it's happened recently, just where I presented something that me and my team, Doug, as you said, we're very proud of. But in the present, Patrick, knowing that I can't control the opinion of my peers, and the only thing I can do is take action, align that with my core values, bring the best product forward, and if it's not adopted or approved or advocated for, or there's not a consensus, that's okay, right? Because the process was followed, the system was followed. We did what we needed to do, but the outcome was not as desired, and that is completely okay. Whereas, the old Patrick would have, had to run around the block and scream or something like that. But just because it I'll phrase it this way: I would have considered that a personal attack. Is
Yeah.
it if the outcome did not go my way, it was a personal attack. And I'll even, and I promise to be quiet after this, even say one more thing. I want to get your all's take on this as well. Is I think a lot of this, I had this, attachment to outcome disease so deep in my bones that I even used it to judge people, right? If you did not arrive at the same conclusion that I did, or the outcome was not the way that I wanted it to be, then I judged you. Because how could you have not come to the same conclusion that I came to? Now, I'm laughing because that's immature and childish, and thank God I've grown beyond that. But that has been, when I say liberating, it's beyond liberating. The fact that I don't tie it to outcomes. I do my best, bring my best, A game every time. But if it doesn't go my way and the outcome's different than planned, that's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, again, all that speaks, going back to the word Derek used, insecurity, right? Because I think a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the worry, a lot of the fear of not measuring up, of not being able to deliver, of failing, and all that, it comes from this insecurity, and recognizing that, detaching from the outcome itself and just being on that learning journey and just experiencing life and fully appreciating that helps. I even go to an additional place. I'm a parent of two grown sons, right? And so, again, as a parent, you worry constantly as you're raising your kids, and you worry as they get older, and like the control thing is magnified there because you can't control your kids, right? All you can do is try to, raise them with the right, behaviors and principles and values and all those kind of things. But one of the things I've had to learn in my parenting journey is, giving them the space to, learn their own way. Giving them the space to grow, fail, learn, all those kinds of pieces. But it really is a difficult detachment from outcomes because you want them to only have good outcomes. But learning to kind of just observe, try to figure out how to offer some advice and other things. But that's been a really difficult journey around detaching from their outcomes.
Derek, what advice would you give to people to get over this hump and detach from outcomes?
Yeah, so two things I would say. One would be what we really hit on earlier, detaching from detaching from the past, and realizing that you're in the present now, where you are now. I think that's very key. I think the other one is exactly what you were hitting on, Patrick, is detaching your opinions from your identity, or opinions of another from your identity, or your opinions. Your opinions can also affect somebody else's identity because of the way you judge them or assess them. So I think that's two key things that allow you to start the journey of detachment and rising above this disease, as you called it. It's a disease that will create a lot of chaos and confusion and strife in your life, conflict. And so, I think that one thing too is doing a value exercise, like really a discovery or rediscovery of your core values, and really taking those and looking at those values and realizing, that's the core of who you are, and that's how you want to show up in life. And when you start living from that space of honoring your value system, it makes this connection to so many outcomes go away. Um, you're okay if something works out great, and you're okay if something doesn't work out great.
Well said.
Agreed.
Doug?
I mean, my advice is really just, again, focusing on the present. because again, I spend a lot of time worrying about mistakes of the past, like Derek said, and a lot of time worrying about what could go wrong in the future. And I do put a lot of my energy and focus into remembering today is today, and I'm going through today, and I just need to focus on what I'm doing today and hope it leads to positive, you know, outcomes, and placing a little more emphasis on enjoying today and enjoying that whatever's going on today, there's some way that I'm growing. I'm either growing in a relationship, growing in a personal learning, growing in a work learning. And so just really not focusing on what could happen in the future, but focusing on today.
Yeah. And I think you guys have hit on some really key topics. We've talked about mindfulness, right? And this comes up frequently on these podcasts, right? None of us can say enough about mindfulness and being present at the moment. So that's, I think, is key. The gratitude components, like be grateful, accept what you have and be grateful. Want what you have. That's key. The concept of embracing uncertainty, the insecurity that, Derek mentioned, working through that. And I'm going to add one more, right? And I think this could be a whole nother subject, but it's been really key for me. Be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself, right? Recognize that we all have these, self-doubts and, and perceptions and things like that. But treat yourself as you would a friend, right? Instead of beating yourself up, like, why didn't this outcome come up? Accepting, I did my best. Give yourself a pat on the back. Be kind to yourself, right? Be your own best friend. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that one on there. I've been doing some studying on kindness and curiosity meditations, and it's been lately, and it's been really, really helpful. So cool. All right. I think we are coming up on time, guys. So let's go around. Any last thoughts before we put this one in the book and plan for the next one?
No, I guess we're all on a journey, like you said, and so again, I think we've talked amongst ourselves around these different kinds of topics, and so getting together and kind of talking about them together has been useful for me, even on my journey, and how it led to that final point that you just made. I think is really good. I do forget to be kind to myself, and I try to be encouraging to others, but I fail at being encouraging to myself.
Gotcha. Derek, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's about playing the long game of investing. We talk about investment in markets with our money to grow, and the best strategy there is the long game over time. And I think that making that commitment now today to invest in taking action to start the journey of detachment and finding security within, finding honoring your values, discovering and honoring your values. I think that's a simple start here. I mean, it's a long game. This is a journey through life. And you constantly have to be aware of it. You constantly have to bring yourself back to the present moment, because life will throw you lots of things at you that's good, it's bad and ugly. And
Yeah.
so you're going to have to, in the moment of those things, just get yourself back to that grounded state of knowing who you are. That's why it becomes so vital to discover and honor your core values.
Exactly. And just one add on to it a little bit. I think the journey of self-development results in psychological or mental flexibility that helps enable what you just described, right? And it gets, the more you meditate, the more you study, the more you grow, those types of things become easier. All right, and for those, we're going to put in the links below, there are some links to some mindfulness and other things that the three of us have been using for many, many years. So feel free to check that out. And until our next session, thanks and have a great week. See ya.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.